the cross-county trail.
Oh.
And I have so far walked from the Occoquan River to the Beltway.
Walked?
Walked. Yep.
In one?
No.
I was gonna say.
And Connie's dog has walked with me a good part of that way because I was babysitting, dog sitting for Connie's dog while she was in Argentina.
Do you think Fairfax is unfriendly, less friendly
no,
than California?
I thought California was very unfriendly when I moved there. It's moving.
Ah.
I was in California 10 years, and probably the first 5 I didn't like it. Moving is, I think it's hard, and when you leave your family behind, it's even harder. That's what I was going to say. I don't have family here. I have my sisters. One of them is in Florida. One is in Washington. My kids, 2 live in California. 1 lives in upstate New York. My father lives in Florida. I mean, I have no family here, and that's why I don't feel rooted here. You know, I'm beginning to get roots. I have friends. I've got things that I like here and things that I do and things that I really enjoy. But I know I can't stay here. I'm not going to be here. I'm going to move to be near my family when my husband retires. So I'm only here, I'm sort of here temporarily.
So when somebody asks you where you come from, I mean, my husband always says, well, I'm 4th generation Californian, even though we've been here, what, 30 years, over 30 years now. What do you say? What are you?
Well, I actually say, I have a hard time, right? Because I'd like to say I'm from California, but I'm really not from California. I only lived in California for 10 years.
So you're in New York.
So I could say I'm from New York, and I lived in New York for 10 years. I didn't grow up in New York.
Where were you born?
I was born in New Brunswick, New Jersey. My parents were going to, well, my father was getting his PhD at Rutgers University.
And your parents were both from England?
Yes, my parents lived in New Jersey their whole life, most of their whole lives, except my father was born in England. And we always say this is the story in my house. My father was born in a log cabin in England, and there was, of course, no telephone back then. And his father had to run for the doctor, and of course he was born before the doctor came.
Where in England?
Of course, it's in Kingstown. It's like near Bath.
Southern England.
Yeah, southern
West,
England.
yeah.
Yeah, and my mother's family. I see, my mother's mother and father came over as a young married couple. Came over from England, and my grandfather was a ship designer, and he couldn't find work in England after the war, and World War I, and so he came over here and got a job designing ships.
In New Jersey?
First of all, they went to Pennsylvania someplace, and then he worked in New York City.
Now, did you keep any traditions from England? This is kind of I don't know how do you?
Well, it's interesting, and I think about it, like, that's one of the interesting things about moving, is when you move someplace, if you have some group, like an ethnicity or someplace, it's easy to you go and you say, okay, I belong to this group. Being English in this country, in a sense, I don't have a group. Like you look and you go, well, what do the English people do? And if they do Morris dancing, right? I mean, that's like the thing English people, it's the only thing you can actually point to and say, okay, the English people do. And they do English madrigal singing. I think there's some English thing
and
like
they
that.
boil all their food.
That my parents did do. In fact, my father would, send the peas back to the kitchen if they were not boiled enough. Yeah, we did do that, and we had steak and kidney pie all the time when I was growing up too.
But they didn't have a group of...
Well,
like the Irish Americans have the...
No, this is really interesting. Like my mother's family. My mother is an only child, and my grandmother was 42 when my mother was born. And my grandmother never expected to have children. And she had this little group of English people. There were 6 adults, and none of them had children. And they were all these tight, and the husbands all kind of worked in the same area. And there was a tight group, and they were together all the time. They did their holidays. They had these like New
Sure.
Year's Eve. They all got dressed up in ball gowns and had, formal dinners and then parties, playing charades and stuff like that. We have pictures of my mom when she's like, 6 she's like the only little child there with little crowns on her head and things like that. But that my mother had, that little tight-knit community. But those people were quite a bit older than, they died fairly, young, when I was pretty young. And so I never had that community, and never had the community, an English community after that.
It's a community of immigrants, you're saying. Once the immigrant group goes, that's it. It's not, the
Yeah.
Irish Americans go beyond that. And
It's
trying,
stayed here by the millions.
Yeah, I don't have that kind of connection with any people that were from England at all. The only connection I had came when I moved here is a religious from the church. I moved here and I got, went to a church with people, and a church that I'd been going to all along, so that was my one connection.
that's the African Unitarian Universalist Church. Is that mainly English or?
No, that's mainly people who are, I don't know, looking for religious freedom.
That's very interesting.